Really excited to just sort of have some fun thinking through the leadership lens. I guess some of us might call it the leadership frame. And a little bit of background on me. I'm just an old hockey player with gray hair that has been curious and passionate about leadership for a long time. I went back and did a master's degree in leadership business, and it just I don't have it figured out. But really excited about, having conversations with leaders like all of you and just sort of thinking through that process, that leadership frame. And that's what we'll do together for, these first two sessions and then potentially some more. I want to start off with just the concept of a mindset, and we'll dive into mindset today. We're going to give you a 6 mindset model that we've developed just to help us as leaders to be aware of the mindsets of our people. And then in our second session, we'll take that and we'll go deeper into team. So we'll really fixate on team there. When I think about sort of a metaphor for this idea around, the leadership and mindset, you guys will have to forgive me. I'm an old timer. In 1986, we had a chance to win a Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens. And as you can tell, that's a pretty young Ryan Walter there. Oh my goodness. I grew up in Burnaby, British Columbia, played my BC junior time in Langley with the Lords back a long time ago. And then actually graduated to the Western Canada, the Western Hockey League in Kamloops and then Seattle. Was drafted by Seattle to Washington. I'll tell you that story. And then got traded to the Montreal Canadiens, where we won a cup in '86. We lost a cup in 1989. So that gives you a quick overview. Here's the metaphor, because I think it's important that we tell some stories just to sort of think about the stuff that we want to dive into as leaders. On 23rd of May, 1986, that was the day that we won the Stanley Cup. So, a pretty high performing team. That's a rhetorical question, right? Absolutely. But as it won't surprise you, because you guys lead people, but way back on February the 15th, 1986, about 100 plus days earlier, that exact same team was underperforming and on the edge of dysfunction, right? That doesn't surprise anybody that's in a leadership position. And so really, what allows people to perform at their highest level? There's a lot of external circumstances that, can take performance away, right? And, we don't have to name them here. You all have a set of circumstances that, sort of undercut the performance of our people. So how do we go from struggling to the ultimate team win? And here's what's cool, leaders. We never made one personnel change and we didn't fire management. Aren't you guys happy with me? Nobody left. Isn't that fun? So what changed? What, from a leadership perspective, what got put into place? And we're going to use this as a bit of a metaphor. Bob Gainey, our great captain at the time, he actually had an important meeting with our team around the middle of February. And that started to, and I'm just going to use a word here, is that we sort of got the unsaid said. So let me say that again. We got the unsaid said. What Jenny and I've learned about leadership and about high performance is that people will connect their performance to their perception of what they do, their perception of the culture, their perception of the team. And so we had a chance to just voice the things that were on our mind at the time. And that helped us clear some space so that we could have the mindset that we needed to have to win. It's crazy, leaders. As you can tell, it had nothing to do with talent. Well, we had exactly the same talent when we were underperforming. as when we probably overperformed to win the Stanley Cup. So I want you to keep that sort of idea, and we want to, plaster everything that we do around this thought. And maybe could you write these 3 words down for me on your handout, on your journal, somewhere on your piece of paper on your desk? Language defines reality. That's a big thought, a big statement. And I just want love you to think about, your leadership position and your people in the context of language defines reality. The idea of performance language, right? And how those two sort of work together from just a leadership concept. Let me try to prove it. So I'm drafted from the Seattle Breakers back in the day. I'm 19 years old and I get drafted to the Washington Capitals. And so if you're you don't need to be a hockey fan to do what we do, but if you're a hockey fan, you know that if I'm drafted number 2 in the world to the Capitals, what does that tell you about their team that year? Right? They're a pretty bad team. They were the 2nd worst team in the NHL that season. And so think about that concept. I'm going into an organization that loses a lot. Right? It's a little bit like if you're in corporate America, a little bit like a startup company playing against, Fortune 500s. We didn't have enough talent to win, and we didn't really have the temperament to win. We didn't have the mindset in place. We were a bunch of young guys trying to figure it out. And here's what I learned in that dressing room. So let me take you inside that dressing room. Is the common cultural language of that dressing room was the language of blame. So unmute when you're ready, just jump in. And we want these to be interactive times. When you're hearing in conversations, when you hear the language of blame, how does it show up? What does it sound like?
Negative.
100%.
Accusational.
Yeah, totally. Right? It's not me. It's that guy over there.
Fault.
Yeah, we fault others. Yeah, that's really good. Keep going. You guys are doing a great job.
There's no ownership.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Don't you love, leaders, don't you love when you hear somebody makes a mistake and they come to you before you hear about the mistake and they say, listen, messed up, but fixed it and it won't happen again. Don't you, that person's got a job forever, right? Like as long as they do what they say. So yeah, totally. A couple more things. What do you hear when you're listening in and you hear blame or the concept of blame? What does it sound like? A couple more.
I think there's a lot of past hurt and anger coming back, like it's cyclical.
It's really good. So when we sort of think about what has been said here in this area of blame, think about the connection to high performance. And the question of every leader in every position is, will I get their best performance through that type of language? It's an interesting thought, right? So the concept that language is not only creates reality, but language starts to reveal the performance reality of our people, right? So one of the things that we want to set right at the very beginning is we look at these 6 mindsets, leaders. We want you to think about them in the construct of language. So what are you hearing? And then how can you and I, as leaders, ethically shift the language and the mindsets of our people? Okay? That's sort of where we want to go with this the concept. So I had traded into these guys in 1982. By the way, my dear wife, Jenny, who's on the call, I was a Washington Capital when we got married on the 5th of June, 1982. And then by September that year, I was traded to these guys, the Montreal Canadiens. My poor wife, right? Like, welcome to the NHL, girl, right? You marry into as a Capital, and months later, you're traded. So when I got into the Montreal Canadiens dressing room, so think about this concept, leaders. This team, the the Capitals, struggled to win and had never been in the playoffs. This team in 1982 had really struggled to lose and had just come off 6 Stanley Cups in 10 seasons. So let me take you inside that dressing room. Now let me put on the table. We weren't perfect. We're a bunch of imperfect people, but there was a different mindset, and there was a different focus, and there was a different culture. So here's the language that I sort of remember, the common cultural language that everything hung on. And it was sort of built around 2 words: no excuses. Right, leaders? No excuses. And can I just say, I had nothing to do with developing that, because I was getting traded into that culture. I had to learn some new language. So when you hear no excuses language, number one, don't you love it? Number two, though, how does it play out? What does it sound like? No excuses language.
It doesn't make time for blaming. It focuses on the way out, like the next step.
Love that. So we're going to have some language that we're going to talk about. We're going to call that future positive focus, and you'll get that language by the end of our session today. So I love that. Absolutely. Others, when we think about sort of this idea of no excuses language, how does it show up?
Accountability. I think it's ownership, accountability. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Roland, did you have a thought there?
No, just the accountability.
Yeah, it's really good.
Again, like Marnie said, taking ownership of what you've done and not blaming.
Totally. And isn't it fun as a leader to listen in? Right? It's one of the great opportunities of our leadership. And I got to say, leaders, I just put on the table, you guys, if I was to ask you to put your hand up if you're busy, like you guys are like off the charts busy, right? You could have another 10 people just for your job. I get that. So when I say listen in, I mean, it takes energy to listen in, doesn't it? Because in one of our sessions, we're going to go deep into leadership and questions. How do we develop the right question to actually get people to, get the unsaid said? To describe this idea of, blame language and then no excuses language. So let me tell you how it played out for me. I'm in with the Capitals. I don't know if you know this, but the linesmen at the NHL level, sometimes they don't drop the puck right. You guys starting to hear maybe an excuse or a blaming coming here? And so I'm an old centerman, and when that puck isn't dropped directly in the center, I'm mad at that linesman. So he drops the puck in Washington on my opponent's side. My opponent wins easily. I go after the linesman. Come on, linesman, drop the puck right. I get into Montreal, and the linesman doesn't drop the puck right, and I'm just going to go after him because that's my habit. My own teammate whacks me in the rear end. He says, no, Ryan. Just win the faceoff. Changes everything, right, leaders? Changes everything. And what I learned as a young player, and I know you guys already know all this stuff, it's more about your people and listening in. As a young player, what I learned in that scenario is it takes as much energy to blame somebody as it does to have a no excuses process, right? To assume responsibility. So just hoping that you can listen into language as you start to think through your process and these 6 mindsets that we're going to give you. I love my time with Vancouver. The last 2 years, my legs had stopped skating, but they allowed me to play anyway. I was an old guy and I came into Vancouver and they had quite a team, right? The Lindens and the Ronings and the Courtnalls and, you know, Pavel Burry and Kirk McLean. Oh my goodness, what a team. And so that was a really cool time. And you know, the language of the Canucks at the time, leaders, pretty cool language actually, was teach us how to win. Here's an assumption I'm going to make about some of your people, just because it's probably an assumption I make about people in general. Is at the NHL level, there's 2 types of players. One player comes to play and they play at the NHL level, and the other player sort of figures out how to win at the NHL level. And what I have found over many years of doing this is those 2 things are different, right, leaders? You have people that come to work, bless their hearts, and you have people that come to win. And the differentiation, the gap, right, is something that we're always trying to close. We're always trying to get people to just show up and just do enough, right, to get to that next level where they're fully engaged and they're excited about their career. So keep that sort of on your mind as we walk through this. The Vancouver Canucks at the time had this beautiful growth mindset thought process of teach me how to win. And what we learned at the NHL level, because you guys know this about your people, is it very seldom is about skill, right? What's it about? It's about how our people think and how they react. What's the mindset and the belief system of our people? So keep those in mind. You know, I just finish up a little history lesson here. Traded from the Capitals to the Canadiens, and that was the headline the day that we landed for training camp. Rick Green and I went from the Capitals to the Canadiens for 4 Montreal Canadiens that went the other way. And so the Montreal Gazette, worst trade in NHL history. And I was the worst part. Boy, did I learn lots about myself in that headline. First thing I learned, leaders, is that the next month I completely underperformed. Think about that. Words count, right? Words have impact. Language defines reality. And so should have I been more mentally tough? Yes. Should have I not allowed a headline to impact me? Yes. But here's the point that I think we just want to solidify, we just want to cement, is that the language of your people is an indicator of the performance of your people. One of the great opportunities of leadership in 2022 is to understand, flush out the unsaid, and have high influence on the language of your culture and the language of your people. And can I just put on the table, that's not an easy thing to do. So let's give you some ideas, and we'll have some conversations around sort of how to do that. So performance process. So let's all of us get on the same page with a bunch of language, and then we can use it as we keep developing each other as leaders. And you know, I'm sort of put on the table that my life is about results. And if Jenny and I were to ask you to lift your hand, and we're not, and we asked, you know, how many people here have to create results? I mean, isn't that the reason we do what we do. There's results on the table. So the idea about results is pretty cool, because I think if you and I can build a process to figure out how to create the results of our business life, we can also create results anywhere else we want, right? So results in our health, results in our family. And so, I want it to be more than just business, but well, we'll focus in on the leadership that you have at the moment. So when you think about sort of this idea of results, the world of sport gives us a pretty cool metaphor. And it gives us a pretty cool saying, and you've heard this 1,000 times. The championship habits deliver championships. How many times have we all heard that? Championship habits deliver championships. By the way, leaders, you already know this, but every NHL coach, every NFL coach, every CFL coach, every coach is fixated on that gap right there. That, they always fixate on the habits of their players, and that's why practice is so important. So habits deliver results. What we want to do, though, is let's define the difference between practiced action and what you and I are going to call the unconscious, non-conscious habit. So actions are more conscious thought. That's when you onboard somebody and they're thinking about the job and they're slow. Would you guys agree when you onboard people, they're slow? Because they have to think. And when we think, we use the frontal lobe, and it's slow because it's processing. But when we move from conscious thought to non-conscious thought, from action to habit, we speed up everything, and we actually get our best performance in the non-conscious habit area. So there's a guy by the name of Zimmerman, a researcher, and he found that if we are in what we call action, so in conscious thought, action, we can access around 40 bits per second in our brain. But if we can move to non-conscious habit, we can access close to 2 million bits per second in our brain. 2 questions. We're gonna try to load everything we do on questions. So maybe just write these questions down, and we'll try to answer them as we finish up this morning. So number 1 question, how do we increase flow, which we call, that's going to be our name for non-conscious habit. How do we increase flow throughout our business? And how do we protect flow in our business? And we'll fully describe what flow is over the next 2 sessions here. But in essence, it's when we go non-conscious, right? It's when we're in the habit side of our business. One of the things that's taken me a while, as I think some of you know, I was the CEO of the Abbotsford Heat, the Calgary Flames affiliate, playing hockey in Abbotsford. And it really hit me in business that the inner game, and we're going to call these ideas down here below the line, have such a high impact on the skill and the outer game of our people. Isn't that so true? It's crazy. So in other words, the inner game, the belief system and the mindset of people either accelerate or decelerate the skill, the behavior, the actions that our people take. So the construct of listening in, of being able to change that inner game, right? Having impact on that inner game is a powerful thought. We'll touch on belief system quickly, but we're going to spend the rest of our time together on the 6 mindset model. So Beecham says that what you believe about yourself and your world is the primary determinant of what you do and how you do it. So when we start to talk about culture, isn't culture sort of it's a set of actions? Yes, but it's also a set of beliefs, isn't it? It's what our people believe about our organization. And again, where does that get formed? It gets formed in language. As we start to think about the opportunity of our people, right? Of leading our people. For 8 out of 10 people, self-image is the key driver of performance. Now, you know, I'm not getting soft on you here, leaders. I'm not trying to get soft on you, but in my mind, after 25 years of doing leadership development with companies and associations and organizations like yours across North America, here's what I've learned. This is the low-hanging fruit of leadership. It's crazy, right? The next time you shake hands or you bump elbows or you have a conversation with one of your people, I'd love you to just laugh and think in your brain, how could I grow the self-image of this person? That crazy? I know, I'm starting to sound soft, aren't I? As an old hockey player. But isn't it crazy that that inner game is the driver of their best game? So let's dive into the mindset model. We'll do a little interactive piece and then we'll be finished up. And these sessions go quick. Could you write down, leaders, 60, 95, 80 on the left-hand side of a piece of paper, north to south? So 60, 95, 80. And we'll just fill this out. It just gives us a good introduction into mindset. So the average person, so if we look at neuroscience, the average person on the average day has about 60,000 thoughts per day. So maybe just put that down, 60,000 thoughts per day. Now I've read 75,000 thoughts, I've read 17,500 thoughts, but most are in the 60,000 thoughts per day mode. Now, what's fascinating with neuroscience now is that 95% of the thoughts that we have today, we had yesterday. 95% of the thoughts we have tomorrow, we're going to have the next day. Isn't that crazy? So a big chunk, the majority of your people's thinking is on automatic, right? It lives in that non-conscious. So there is either a great opportunity or a great problem, right? Because if we've all been on teams that have had negative momentum in their culture. And so now that answered the reason why. What our people thought about our culture yesterday, they're going to think about it today and they'll think about it tomorrow. So one of the big questions that we want to, just put out there, I don't have an answer for because you do in your specific culture, is how do we as leaders ethically shift the thinking of our people? Maybe write that down somewhere. How do we as leaders ethically shift the thinking of our people? So 95% of the thoughts that we had yesterday, we're going to have today. So one of the things that we'd love you to think about as a leader is how can you have high input, high influence on the inputs of your people? How can we have high influence on the inputs of the thinking, of the mindset of your people? And then it doesn't surprise you with the 80, right? 80% of the 95% of the 60,000 thoughts are negative thoughts. It's crazy, right? It's called a negative bias. So if we do no work with our people in this area, leaders, 80% of the time where external circumstances or internal angst hits us or hits our people, we go negative. Can I just put on the table? Negativity is not wrong. And this is not a positive thinking model. But would we also agree that it's very hard to play our best game, to have the language that we need to have to perform at the highest level through high negativity? Okay. I've played on NHL teams where you hardly wanted to walk through the door. I've played on other NHL teams where you couldn't wait to get in the dressing room. What was the difference? The difference was culture. You know, by end of session, we're going to give you a ratio of how much negativity to positivity should be on in your culture, like on your team, just to hold the team that you've got if you like your culture. All right, away we go. So write down this final word, and then let's jump into the model, and we'll start to finish up. So metacognition. Now, leaders, there's a big word for a hockey player, right? Metacognition. So what does metacognition mean? Basically, in a nutshell, it means thinking about thinking. Okay, so write that down next to the word, thinking about thinking. In down the road in our coaching, we have a coaching session, and we actually give you 30 key questions to help increase the metacognition of your people. So how do you influence the thinking about thinking of the people, okay? And the reason I bring up metacognition right now is I want you to actually feel it. So I'm going to push you into metacognition right now around 6 mindsets. And I want you to be aware of your thinking around your thinking so that you can use this concept. By the way, let me pause. I think a top 5 leadership, let me just pop on here. I think a top 5 leadership concept in 2022 is influencing the metacognition of our people. And we can only do that through questions. Statements don't work. Statements jump up into, right, somewhere up in the brain, and they happen, and it's important to do statements. Don't get me right. It's important to tell. But let me give you a concept that we've been thinking about for a long time. When I listen as a leader, when I'm listening to answer, I now call that mentoring. But when I listen to ask, I now call that coaching. So that when you have time and you are in the coaching mode, that's when you're actually working to develop the metacognition of your people. Okay? We'll go deeper on that over the next little bit. All right, we call it the thinking tendencies model. And if you received that handout from Marnie or you printed it out, should look like an ice arena. Sorry about that. You guys got to put up with me, right? And so it's going to look like this. And here's the context of the model. So we put positive thinking in the top net, okay? Negative thinking in the bottom crease, in the bottom net. So this is, I want to give you the context of how we came up with the model. Then we put past thinking on the left-hand boards and future thinking on the right-hand boards. So the pair of opposites really kick out 6 fun mindsets, okay? And that's how we built our model. And it's just we wanted to give you a visual. So it's on your mind, and so that you can remember it, so that it's easy to sort of focus on. Bottom left, so this is where you guys really take over. So in the bottom left, think about this, we've got past thinking and we've got negative thinking. So the new language we want you to use now is past negative thinking, okay? Now, fire away, unmute when you're ready. How do you describe past negative thinking? What are some of the descriptive words for past negative thinking?
That didn't work before.
We never hear that one, right, Marnie? We never hear that.
We've already tried that.
100%, right? A couple more.
The fear to try again based on failure before or negative results before.
It's really good. It's really good. I love that, Joanne. And so you've moved us ahead a bit, which is cool. Past negative thinking often bridges to future negative focus, right?
Yeah.
So past negative thinking. So let's fully sort of describe it. And you guys keep thinking through, sort of your context. So past negative thinking, put down some key words, put down disappointments as a descriptor, put down regrets as a descriptor, put down blame, right? This is where blame lives. Here's a hard one. Shame lives there too, right, leaders? That's a hard one, right? So past negative thinking, could we just put on the table that if we were just to take past negative thinking and we were to live there, if we just focus in that area and had no remedy for a long time, let's just put on the table that, typically we end up in the hospital. Think about the concept. We're 100% focused on everything we hate about our life, everything we're disappointed in, all the regrets, right? All the blaming. So past negative thinking can be a deep, dark hole, but here's the fun part, is past negative is not all negative, right, leaders? If you and I can help our people see their past negatives through a learning frame, we can move right quickly up into future positive. We can absolutely change energy. So I love to say to people now, after 64 years, I turned a 64. Where did that go? I turned 64 in April, right? In a couple of days. And here's what I'm thinking now is there is no loss. If we want to frame past negative in a better way, there is no loss in my life. I either win or I learn. Right? I either win or I learn. And I remember that from the NHL level, when we were on as teams, every loss was a learning opportunity to win again. But so many people get stuck in the loss. Would we all agree with that? And then we focus on the loss. We focus on the wrong. It's not wrong to focus on problems, but we focus there and then we struggle to get out. Past negative thinking is fascinating. Okay, team, let's move. Bottom right, future negative thinking. This is an easy model. Give us some ideas around future negative thinking. What are the words that describe this?
That'll never work.
Totally. Other thoughts? What hits home?
Not going to try that again.
Totally. Right.
I think fear lives there in the future negative.
Great point, Graham. Fear. So put in fear as an indicator. Add to fear worry and anxious, right? Like those are key focus words for future negative thinking. So again, remember at the beginning of our time together, we asked you to listen in at a higher, just listen in with intensity to your people. And what are you going to hear in conversations? You're going to hear fear. You're going to hear regret. You're going to hear worry. You're going to hear blame. So the goal of this model is to give you a construct that you can actually better understand the thinking of your people. Okay? Mark Twain, don't you love Mark Twain? He said this: if a cat steps on a hot stove, you got that? That's a good one. That cat will never step on a hot stove again. The problem is that cat will never step on a cold stove either. Not a great thought. And what we're doing, leaders, with companies all across North America is thinking through this process of how we do our future negatives. Right? If we live in future negative, basically that's called a news cycle today, isn't it? Think about what we pick up from the news. It's either past negative or it's future negative. And so even if you've got people that have good, solid, positive energy, as they come into your building, many of those people are going to go home and their external circumstances are going to suck the energy out of them. So the ratio of positivity to negativity in a culture now is a really interesting construct. Okay, and we'll get there in a minute. Future negative thinking, powerful place. Now, future negative is not all negative, right, leaders? If you and I can see our future negative thinking through what you and I call a contingency plan or a risk assessment, turns into a very positive thing, right? And as a matter of fact, the higher you go in your leadership positioning, the more we push you into future negative thinking. You need to have, if COVID-6 comes back, or inflation goes to 12%, or like, we have to have a plan for all of that, right, leaders? We have to look ahead at the future negatives. So we actually get good at this. But here's what I'd like to do, and I'd love to challenge you in this area. In your past negatives and your future negatives, I want you to use this word this week and practice it and try it. We want you to compartmentalize your past and future negative thinking. In other words, I believe that leadership in 2022 is 2 words. Here's my descriptor now. Intentional influence. For me, that's what leadership is, intentional influence. More than ever in our lives, we have to be more intentional around our thinking and around the influence that we have with our people. So I'd love you to think about your negativity from an intentional point of view instead of a reactional point of view. That's a big challenge. One of the ways that we're asking executives to do this, and you're going to laugh at me, is find a time in your schedule. And actually, you know how some people look at time chunking, right? Is chunk a time in. I'm going to say Thursday from 3 to 4 o'clock, and put in your schedule a time chunk that says past negative thinking, future negative thinking. Actually build it into your calendar. Look back at everything that went wrong in your week. Look forward to everything that might go wrong next week. But here's the beauty of having that chunked into your calendar and to be intentional. Here's the beauty, leaders. Monday morning, when your brain goes negative, you can say, no, sorry, brain. I've got an appointment with you at 3 o'clock Thursday. Right? Build an appointment. Be intentional. I think the reason I'm asking you and challenging you in this area, leaders, is that if we don't do it, our people won't do it. Agreed? The number 2, in my mind, number 2 out of 5 key components of leadership in 2022 is this statement: your people emulate your energy. That's it. Your people emulate your energy. As you walk through the door, they walk through the door. Agreed? As your face shows up, and you're all beautiful. I don't mean that you're not, but as your face shows up over Teams, over Zoom, whatever it is, their face shows up, right? That's a leadership principle that's been there forever. Your people emulate your energy. So how do we compartmentalize our negativity? All right, enough of a challenge there. And that's as you receive the challenge, leaders, I am taking the challenge too. It's up to me to be, I guess what I would call joining you in the things that we want to do together as leaders. So top left, let's go quick. We've got a couple of minutes left here. Past positive thinking. Somebody help me out. What's the descriptor for past positive?
What went really well?
Totally. These are the wins of our organization, right? These are the things that have gone great. And one of the things that we want you to do, leaders, is we want you to live here a little more. Do you know what we do as leaders often? We focus on problems. That's what we do as leaders. But very seldom do we spend time thinking back on our successes. So at any time that you need to regenerate energy, remember, frame in more past positives. This is gratitude, right? This is thankfulness. These are your wins. One of the greatest opportunities to change energy in your culture is to get people fixated on the things that went well in the past. Okay? And then finally, on the outer four, we call this one on the top right, future positive thinking. Could we spend half a month in this one? Right? These are the great meetings that we have. These are the solutions that we generate. These are the goals that we have. This is the business plan. This is everything, right? We're moving forward. And we love that. There's a little thing that, science is teaching us. It's great in your line of work and it's great in my line of work. It's called the reticular activating system. It sits in your brain and it feeds us more of what we commit to, and it feeds us more of what we focus on. So one of the things I'm challenging leaders like you guys to do is journal your wants. What do you want more of? What do you want your team culture to look like? Right? What do you want your workers to look like? How do you want them to show up? What do you want for their energy? What do you want for your revenue? What do you want for your holidays? What do you want for your kids, for your spouse? Here's what we're learning. Most people don't have what they want because most people don't know what they want. And they know it up here. It comes and goes in the brain, but we never write it down. So let me just challenge you one more time. I'd love you to start to journal. I've been journaling for a long time. I have no idea why, but I know that there's huge performance increase opportunity by getting out of our cognition in our brain and onto a piece of paper. Simple stuff. I want you to journal 3 things to start, right? Number 1, go to your past positives. At the end of the day, journal what you're thankful for. Journal what gratitude you have, your wins, your, some great things that happen. Number 2, journal your future positives, right? What do you want more of? What would you like in this situation? What are the next things that you want to focus on? And then number 3, and this is from science, is brain dump in your journal. You know those little things in your brain like, oh, I've got to pick up milk on my way home to the kids and my wife? Write it in your journal and then get it from journal to to-do list or calendar. Brain dump in your journal. It's a place for everything. And if you'll do those 3 things, there's a 20 to 30% increase in productivity that science talks about. So journaling is a powerful piece, getting it on the piece of paper and out of the cognition, okay? So what I want us to do now, we're just gonna spend a little, well, there's our 4 mindsets. And so you can see that those are outer mindsets, right? I call them the outer 4. And these are actually in what we call, we're in conscious thought. So you actually have to be in conscious thought to hit these 4. We're going to go to the neutral zone probably next training session, and we're going to look at 2 more mindsets in the neutral zone. One of those is conscious thought in the neutral zone. The next one is non-conscious thought in the neutral zone, and that's what we talked about when we said the flow zone. Okay, that's where flow lives. Here's what I'd like you to do, and we're just going to spend just a little bit of time doing a very quick exercise, and then we'll finish up. Could you all do me a favor and take your phone? Some of you might be more sophisticated than me, and you can actually do a screen capture. I want you to either take a photo of this screen with these words with your phone, or take a screen capture of these words. Either way, I'm going to move you into Zoom rooms where you're not going to have them. So thanks for taking a photo of that. And I'm just going to check to make sure everybody's got one. Okay, we're good to go there. And now let me just put you into Zoom rooms. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you in pairs to look at the words that are on your phone that you captured, and then look at the 4 outer mindsets that we've talked about and have discussion around where does this word fit? So let's take an example. One of the early words is blame. So just for fun, where would blame fit within the 4 mindsets so far?
Past negative.
Beautiful, right? Lives in past negative. And here's what we want you to do. We're going to give you about 6 or 7 minutes, then ask each other, could blame fit anywhere else? Okay? So have that discussion. See if you can take those words deeper. Here's the goal, is you may or may not get to all of the words. Don't worry about that. Just really dive deep into where would this language fit and where could I hear it in the construct of the 4 mindsets so far. So Marnie, just remind me of numbers as we set this up. I'm
counting, Ryan. I think we were supposed to have 16, but I think we got less.
Okay.
It says 17, including you and I.
Okay,
I
so
think
15.
Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, I'll break you into rooms here, and you'll either be paired up or one room might have a 3. I will also be coming into those rooms, leaders. So if you have questions, but just before I go, any questions? So you just
Ryan,
take that language, take the words, and have some fun identifying where they would live in the 4 mindsets. Have some fun here.
Just one quick question. You said blame, it goes into past negative, but do you then see if it goes into other places? You want us to see if every word goes into other places?
Yes, Marnie, great
got it.
catch. I'd love you to have that discussion. Could there be multiple places where words live? Love that. Thank you. Have fun.